Hello, everyone, and welcome to Career Conversations, Acing the Virtual Interview. Thank you so much for joining us today. On behalf of UCLA Alumni Career Engagement, we're excited to have you, and I want to remind you all that our team will continue to put out career content for all our alumni to support you during this unique time. Our team works to support both alumni and students with career and professional development programs, and this Career Conversation series is just one way that we're reaching out to other alumni to support you in your career development with topics such as interviewing, job searching, and many more. So thank you for joining us, and know that there will be more programming to come. I'm super excited to introduce our featured speaker today. I have Lori Vickers, alumna class of 2002, who graduated from UCLA with a degree in English and now works at In-N-Out Burger as a talent acquisition partner. So before we get started, just to kind of give you all the agenda today, Lori has a brief presentation that she will run through with you that will talk a little bit briefly about some resume tips to help you all in applying to jobs and hoping that you can get that interview from submitting your resume. And then she'll share some of her virtual interviewing tips for success. So we will go ahead and get started, and I will let Lori introduce herself and take it away.
Thank you, Katie, and welcome everyone. I'm so excited and happy to be here and hopefully share some of my tips that I've learned throughout the years with everyone. And my goal is for everyone to walk away from this presentation with some practical and actionable advice that you can take with you when you are job searching out there. And I know it's not an easy thing to do, and it can be frustrating, but hopefully by the end of this today, you can have some, tips that can maybe help the journey be a little bit easier for you guys and land you that phone interview and, of course, ultimately that job. So I'll go ahead and begin sharing my screen and starting the presentation. So the agenda is we'll start off by talking to you a little bit about me and my background, and then I want to launch right into my tips for resume writing. And then, of course, go into virtual interviews. And then I want to finish off with your Q&A. I'm definitely happy to answer any questions that you might have, and happy to hang around as well to answer any questions. So a little bit about me. I have my LinkedIn profile on here, but I've been in the recruitment industry for about 14 and a half years now. I started off actually in healthcare, working for a physician recruitment firm. We worked with hospitals and medical groups all over the country, and we helped hire their doctors. So that's how I got my start in the recruitment industry, and really fell in love with recruitment. My background, like Katie said, I was an English major at UCLA. So being an English major, you read and write a lot, and I love stories and storytelling. And to me, recruitment is a little bit of that. I love talking to people, hearing their stories, hearing their life journey. So I think that's just kind of where my background is. And luckily I was able to find a career that makes me happy in that. So 14 and a half years ago, spent about a decade in healthcare. Great. And then about 4.5 years ago, had an opportunity to join In-N-Out Burger, changing the industry, jumping from healthcare into quick service, fast food restaurant. And I've been there ever since. So I have a couple pictures up here. One of some of my recruitment friends and I up at the In-N-Out Burger in San Francisco at Fisherman's Wharf. We were up there earlier this year, pre-COVID, when we could travel. And so we kind of mourn and miss those days. And then I have a picture of just my family, my husband. I have 2 kids, a 2nd and a 4th grader. We're big Disney people, big annual pass holders. So this is just a picture of us at Disneyland. And then, of course, a picture below with my kids and I. I'm already starting to train them up in the ways of UCLA and being a Bruin. So this is up at Poly Pavilion about a year ago. So just kind of a little bit of my background. But jumping into why you're here, some of my tips for resume writing. I try and tell people, I'm sure you've heard it before, recruiters probably spend I don't know, 5 to 10 seconds. Unfortunately, on reading a resume, I know you guys spend hours putting one together. So my hope is when you're putting these resumes together to put them in a way that's very readable and scannable. That way we can quickly assess and look at what you're putting out there and make our decision as to whether to move forward or not. So I like to see a professional title or header under your name. And my advice is to put a title that reflects maybe the job that you're looking for. So this person is looking for an administrative position. If you're going into marketing, if you're trying to become a web developer, I think it's great because then it signals to the recruiter, I'm serious. This is really the job I like. So I think having that professional title is really important. Another thing in your contact information with your name and phone number, definitely put in your LinkedIn profile. And I think if you personalize it, that's an extra touch. For example, my LinkedIn has my name at the end of it. So it's pretty easy to do under the settings part of your LinkedIn profile. So that's always nice to see because recruiters, I do like to look at people's LinkedIn profiles. So this part, kind of the meat of your resume, a lot of people might put career objectives. I think this is fine. I prefer professional summary just because I like a brief summary, maybe 2 to 3 sentences of who you are, I guess what you've been doing and what you would like to do. And sometimes, you know, this part can be a little bit generic with some of the resumes I read. It could just be hardworking professional looking to further my career growth. And that's all it might say. So it doesn't, to me, that's a bit bland. It doesn't really tell me about the person. So I like to see a professional summary that tells me really about the role you're seeking. I think it's great. This is kind of a formula I like to see is the job that you're looking for, just have it be out front. So if you're looking for an administrative assistant position, write administrative assistant with 5 years experience doing et cetera, or marketing professional, or nonprofit executive director looking for my next role in something like that. So kind of once again, getting back to the idea that recruiters are scanning your resume. So kind of seeing right away, it jump off the page, who you are and what you're looking for is a good tip. And another thing too that I like to see is even if you're changing careers during COVID, and unfortunately so many people have been laid off this year, and a lot of people have also maybe had some reflection and been home with their families and they've decided to do some career changes. I'm seeing that a lot in the industry. But note that, just say you've been a teacher for 10 years, but you want to get into human resources. I would even say in your professional summary, college professor with 10 years teaching experience looking to transition into the human resources field. Or, I mean, you can just put that out there. The reason why is if you're applying for an HR job, but your resume reads teacher, the recruiter is going to think, you know, what job are they applying for? So you need to make that connection for them. You need to make it easier for them and tell them what you're looking for. And same thing with all of you out there who are recent college grads or early career, maybe less than 5 years out of college. You can even say seeking college graduates seeking an entry-level position to further my marketing skills, or so I can learn more about the travel and events industry. So I think being honest in this field is really important. I do like to read these summaries. The next section I like to see on a resume is a skills section or core competencies, areas of expertise. There's different ways you can title this, but to me, this is a big keyword alert for you guys out there. Unfortunately, with a lot of companies, a human doesn't read your resume right away. You might get caught up in an applicant tracking system, which is the ATS system that filters out resumes. And so what you're going to want to do is put in keywords into your resume so you can get flagged in order to get a phone call from the recruiter. As far as how you pick your keywords, you're going to want to read the job description and really pull keywords from the job description. The hiring managers really take a lot of time, or they should, to put these job descriptions together. And so you're really going to want to read what they're looking for. And I would just pull some of the words directly from the job description. Plus, you might want to look for sometimes you'll see kind of the same words over and over again, or even the synonyms. And that really tells you what the hiring manager is looking for. If you see teamwork, collaboration, I mean, if you kind of see a pattern with a skill they're looking for, make sure to include that in this area of your resume, or even in the body, because it is alerting you that that's really what the hiring manager is looking for. Or, customer service or friendly, things like that. You're going to kind of start seeing a theme with the job descriptions. So that's a little tip there. Another thing is, usually with job descriptions, the most important skills they're looking for is listed at the top of the job description. So those first 4, 5, or 6 bullets listed, those are pretty much must-haves for a hiring manager. This is a pattern I see over and over again. So the top half of a job description is very, very important. And then as it gets longer in the job description, those are more wish list kind of items typically. So really make sure you have the skills that they're looking for in the top portion of the job description. I could talk about this part a long time, so I'm definitely happy to answer any questions.
I was gonna say your point, I think, about like looking at that list as, once again, the top part of them being those must-haves or requirements, but also I think that's such a great point you make, Lori, because that list of qualifications this is the ideal candidate, has all of these things. And so like Lori said, it's that ideal wish list, but really focus on those things at the very top that are crucial for this person to have to do well in this role.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And references, it's really not needed on your resume. It's taking up valuable real estate. So I usually tell people you don't need to put them on there at this stage in the interview process or the job search process. And as far as education, I would move this to the bottom, especially if you're 10 to 15 years out of school. I think if you're right out of school, keeping it at the top is okay. But anything past 10 years, you're probably going to want to keep at the bottom of the resume. After 10 years, at that point in your career, hiring managers are really looking for your experience versus your education. Of course, education is very important, but at that stage in your career, they're really looking for the type of experience that you have. So a few tips that I like to share is really to customize your resume to the job you're applying for. I completely get this is very hard and a lot of extra work on your part. The hope is the hard work will pay off, because I can tell when an applicant is using what we call the spray and pray model, where they just spray and splash their resume to every single job that's out there, knowing that they're not qualified. And I think they're just hoping that they'll get a call back. So if you really take the extra time to customize your resume, I can tell it's very noticeable. I even have some people in the professional summary will say, and this is very customizable, looking for a marketing position with In-N-Out Burger, and they'll actually list the company they're applying to. So to me, that shows, wow, they really took the extra step to really show that they want to work for my company. But I get that's a lot of hard work, but it does pay off. When you are talking about the body of your resume, you're going to want to list some of your job responsibilities, but of course you want to focus on your accomplishments. If you can quantify your accomplishments, that's a big plus. Increased sales by 10%, decreased budgetary spending by 30%, called 100 more, made 100 more sales calls in a weekly or quarterly period than my peers. Throwing numbers out there, hiring managers do like to see that. If you have a job where you can't quantify, I would maybe try to show that you are able to affect positive change in somehow. So you can even say improved company morale by organizing team outings, or increased customer service response time. If you're not able to quantify it, just show that you increased, improved, made better. Every hiring manager is really just looking for someone to come on their team and make things better. So if you can somehow showcase that, they do like to see that. Of course, checking for spelling errors, typos, grammar. I think everyone knows this, but I always have to put this on there. And titling the resume, once again, getting back to customizing, you might have 50 different types of resumes that you're saving on your home computer. I would just title resume, your name, the job you're looking for, and the company. That might keep you organized as well as if you are searching and applying for multiple jobs. And then I would save it as a PDF. That way, when it opens up on the other side of things on someone else's computer, the formatting doesn't get kind of funny. So I would definitely save it on PDF. As far as not including on your resume, I wouldn't include a photo. This can lead to bias or discrimination. We'd all like to think it doesn't. Unfortunately, it can sometimes. Like I mentioned earlier, college graduation, anything 15 plus years, just go ahead and list that at the bottom. And I would even remove the date, actually. Pages, no more than 2 pages, ideally. If a recruiter needs to see more information, we will ask that of you. Once again, we're quickly scanning things. Unfortunately, we just don't have time to read all those pages. And what references we'll ask for you when the time is right. And then tailing your resume. So I know I kind of repeated a few of these things, but those are very, very important, I think, in your job search. And also asking someone else to review. When you look at your own resume, for hours on end, you're not going to see your typos or, misspelled words. I have unfortunately had hiring managers look at a resume and see a typo or a grammar and toss it to the side and say, oh, no attention to detail, can't talk to them. So whether it's fair or unfair, I'm telling you, please make sure it's on point as far as your spelling and grammar.
I was going to say too, especially for those, there, where it's not going to have a red line under it in Word. And you want to make sure that like, those are the typos that if someone else, when you're looking at it and so focused on your document, you're not seeing it. And so getting, friend, partner, roommate, whatever it is, to take a look at that, and they might, catch that. The other thing I was going to say, I think your point too, Lori, about the customizing your resume is so important, because many of you, of course, I'm sure, especially our more experienced professionals, or maybe a little farther along in your career, have your master resume with all of your experience. And so one way, as Lori said, I think keeping you organized is having your tailored resumes. And so there's a lot of you that might be applying to different types of roles. And instead of just using that same resume for every single job application, you want to make sure that, you could have your resume, you could save it as marketing resume, and then follow that same structure that Lori said of like, with your name and everything like that. But you could have a marketing resume, you could have PR, you could have social media management, whatever it may be. And you can have those resumes saved so you know which one you can edit and tailor to provide the most relevant experience for that recruiter or hiring manager that's scanning your resume.
Exactly. Thank you, Katie. And I know a few of you probably have questions, so definitely feel free to put them in the chat, and then I will get to questions at the end, just so you know. Okay, great. You put together an awesome resume. It got past the ATS system. It got in front of a human being, and they want to reach out to you and schedule a phone interview. So a lot of phone interviews are now being taken place by virtual interviews. So just kind of wanted to address that and throw on there kind of how we behave Zoom versus just on a phone. And just some tips. So of course, testing technology just to make sure your Zoom or your Skype, Google Hangouts, whatever you're using is downloaded and ready to go, up to date. And doing what I call setting the scene. So the thing about Zoom and these virtual interviews is they are seeing your personal space. I've seen so many living rooms, bedrooms, kitchens, backyards in the last 6 months. So just make sure it looks nice and clean and not cluttered. I have seen a couple bedrooms where behind them the bed hasn't been made, or there's a pile of laundry. Try not to do that. I'm not going to disqualify a person because their bed hasn't been made, but it just more shows that you take the interview seriously. So just try and kind of keep it nice, keep your space nice and neat. Dressing, I think I would dress for a Zoom interview the way you would if you were meeting them in person. So whether it means wearing a suit and tie, or if the dress is casual, being casual, but still looking nice on the interview, I think that's important. Of course, pajama pants, I still would put on nice pants just in case you have to move out of the screen. Definitely want to make sure your whole outfit is prepared for an interview. Also have some funny stories regarding that kind of stuff. And then even just being prepared, having a pen and paper in front of you, your resume, questions for the interviewer. Even as I'm talking to you, I have my paper here, my pen, I'm ready to go. So you definitely want to be prepared, just like you would any regular interviewer. The big thing about Zoom and the hard thing is really engaging the interviewer on Zoom. My advice is you might have to turn up the energy a little bit more on Zoom than you would in person, just 10 to 20% a little bit, because you do need to exude energy and positivity over video, which is harder to do doing it in person. In person, you can kind of fill up your room with a certain energy. There's a handshake, there's a lot that can happen in an interview, but on Zoom, it's a little bit different. So you're going to want to be a little bit more engaging if you can on a Zoom interview. And then follow up. I'm still very old school. I love a good thank you note, whether it's email or even a thank you note that's sent to me through the actual mail. Is great. I would follow up within 24 hours and even bonus points if you could follow up with each person you interviewed with. For example, if you're on a panel interview with multiple people, sending an individual email to every person and try to personalize it a little bit. Maybe during the interview, you talked about the person's dog and just saying, oh, I hope you have fun at the beach this weekend with your dog, and just showing that you were listening on the interview. I hear that from hiring managers all the time. They love receiving them. And sometimes I've heard hiring managers get off an interview, think it's a great interview, and say a couple of days later, they'll run into me in the hallway and say, Lori, I really like that candidate, but I haven't heard from her since then. I think they do like to see that you're interested in and engaged. So I think a follow-up is some good advice. And those are my tips for resume writing and Zoom interviews. And thank you again. I hope some of this was helpful, and I'm definitely happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Awesome.
Thanks, Katie.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lori. So now, and you're welcome, Lori, if you want to stop sharing your screen for your presentation, and we'll move into Q&A. I know there's been questions coming in throughout your presentation, so we're getting a lot of great tips and insights. So as we start and move into questions, I will start with, I have about 4 or 5 that I took from the registrations for today's event. So thank you to all of you who submitted your questions during registration. There was a great list for Lori and I to choose from, but we chose, I think, some really popular ones that came in multiple times. So I'm going to start with some of those. So my first question is, how would you recommend answering the classic tell me about yourself question, Lori, that we know candidates are going to get no matter who they're interviewing for, what type of role, but that introduction, tell me about yourself question. How do you recommend answering that?
Sure. So tell me about yourself. You definitely want to have a good elevator pitch for yourself. You are going to be asked this constantly throughout the interview process, whether it's the first interview with a recruiter or the last interview with the CEO or the department head. You're gonna get asked this. So I like this question. I love asking it. It is my opening question as a recruiter. I think it has multiple purposes. One, it is meant to ease us into the interview. I don't like jumping in saying, what's your strengths and weaknesses? To me, an interview is meant to be a conversation. So tell me about yourself is a bit of an icebreaker. It's a transition. It's easing you into the interview. I'm also seeing a little bit how you respond in kind of a stressful situation. Interviewing is stressful. And so I kind of want to see how comfortable you are in that. the pressure's on you. So how do you behave when the spotlight is on you? A recruiter is looking at that. We're also evaluating your communication skills. How do you present yourself? How do you communicate with the person you're talking to on the phone or in an interview? So there's a couple of different purposes for that. Ultimately, I also want to hear about you and your work history. I think a good formula to follow is to talk about the present first and then go into the past. So if someone were to ask me, tell me about yourself, I would probably talk about my current role. I am a recruiter at In-N-Out Burger. I've been there for about 4.5 years. Talk a little bit about that. And then I would even segue into, but in the last 10 years, I spent healthcare recruiting. So that's a good formula to follow. Once again, this answer, there's no one perfect answer. But we really just want to hear about you. And by you, I should point this out too. I want to hear about you professionally. So I think we want to know about your work history, your what you've done in your career. I really don't need to know at this stage whether you like walking on the beach or you're an outdoors person, or kind of those personal things. I joke that think of it as like, this is a LinkedIn profile, not a dating profile, or I'm not match.com. I don't need to know if you want long walks on the beach. I mean, personal stuff can come later. I'm happy to get to that. But I think initially the tell me about yourself question is really for you to keep it professional. We want you to show your enthusiasm for the role that you're applying for, and enthusiasm for yourself and for your career and what you're trying to do, and really your why and why you have been doing what you've been doing in your career and why you're looking for a change. And so it's sort of the storytelling part of the interview process. Once again, no right or wrong answers, but that's what a recruiter is looking for when we do ask you that question.
Yeah, I think that's a great structure. Like you said, focus on starting with the present and then going into the past. And I think the other thing too, I know I've seen it multiple times in that question, the hiring manager recruiter does not need to hear your entire work history. You want to focus on, as you're sharing in your answer, focusing on, your current role and or after that, the most relevant work or professional experience you've had in connection to the role that you're interviewing for. So they don't need to hear everything, but focus on what are those jobs and experiences you've had that have best prepared you or most prepared you for the current role you're interviewing for.
Exactly. I would just keep asking myself, does my answer move the needle on me getting this job or showcasing me in a positive professional light? Not, oh, well, I'm 30 years old. I was born in Houston, Texas. And that's fine. Once again, I'm not going to, decline someone because they're talking to me about their personal life. It's just not relevant at this point in the hiring process to what I need to know in order to make my decision to move you on in the hiring process.
Right. That makes sense. So my next question is, what do you look for in an interviewee or the candidate the most? What are those things that you're looking for the most?
So and by me and including probably recruiters that I know and hiring managers, I do look for a bit of a combination of really hard skills and soft skills. So hard skills, I am looking for, of course, competence. Really, can this person do the job that I'm looking for? So really checking off those boxes. So that's that's something I like to see. I like to see, are they a problem solver? Do they have a can-do kind of attitude, or are they a that's not my job type of person? So solving problems, learning agility, really trying to showcase, okay, maybe this person doesn't have quite the skills we need, but are they teachable? Are they trainable? Are they open to feedback? Are they flexible? So I'm trying to gauge that in the interview process. Are they resourceful? So if they're given direction with not much information, can they still figure it out? Or do they need a lot of hand-holding? So being resourceful, grit. I like to see grit. I like to see perseverance. I like to see that even when things were tough in life, they still were able to find a way to make things better. So those are some things I like to see, and I think a lot of the hiring managers that I work with like to see. And some of those skills were a little bit soft skills too. I think soft skills, I do like to see someone's passion for their work, passion for work. I like to see their motivation, hopefully a lot of intrinsic motivation. And what are they motivated by? Are they, I think it's okay to be motivated by outside external forces, money, title, prestige, things like that. And there are some great fields that really reward that kind of motivation, and that's fine. I do like to see intrinsic motivation too. Are you internally motivated even when you're told no all the time, or even when you're maybe given a job task that you don't like or is boring or redundant? Are you still going to do it to the best of your ability? So those are some things I like to see too. And reliability, working hard, teamwork, communication. And a big one is really just general likability. I think people want to work with people who they like. I get this is completely subjective, and this is a tough one. And I don't think people should change who they are by any means in an interview process, nor should you try and guess what the recruiter is looking for or the company. But just, does this person seem like someone that the team is going to want to look for? So there's a few of those skills.
Yeah, that's a great list, really great list. What are some great follow-up questions during an interview, or what's the most impressive question that you've received from a candidate in that portion of the interview where, the recruiter asks, do you have any questions for me? What are some great follow-ups?
I love this part of the interview process where at the very end, I ask a candidate, do you have any questions for me? And I'm always so sad. My heart drops when they say, nope, I'm done. I think they're just happy they survived the interview process, that they want to get off the phone as quickly as possible. But I really want to see how they think and what they're interested in. And so please, if I can give some advice, at least have 2 questions ready at the end of the interview, for that reason. Some of the questions I've heard that I like is, what does success look like to you in this role or at this company? Or could you talk to me about the characteristics of successful people at your company, and what is that? And as they share, we're looking for teamwork or reliability or customer service, just show your interest, like, oh, that's great. I love being part of a team. So whatever skills the recruiter is telling you, it's meant to be a conversation. Feel free to jump in and say, I love that. I love customer service. Or when they say hardworking, oh, that's me. I'm always the first to arrive, the last to leave. You want to give examples of how you have exhibited these types of behaviors. So I like that question. What does success look like to you? And another question is, can you tell me more about the team or the department I'll be working with? To me, it shows interest on your part that, okay, they really want to work here. They want to know who they're working with. So that's a question I like to hear. I even like, what is your favorite part about working here? And that's good for you guys to ask, because an interview is a two-way street. You're also interviewing me, and you're interviewing the company for you to decide, is this where I want to spend my days? And so asking the recruiter or the hiring manager, what's your favorite part about working here? It lets them talk to you about the culture and why they like their job. And I think this is a big, if you are talking to your recruiter or hiring manager and they don't seem positive, or their face doesn't light up a little bit, I guess, when they talk about their job, that might be a red flag. I would not maybe take that job. So that's a question for you guys in order for you to gather information. But if you just Google questions to ask interview, there's hundreds of them. They're all great. I just advise, please ask a question. Please don't end the interview abruptly. I think a recruiter does want to be able to help you.
Yeah, definitely. And those are great questions you shared, Lori. Those are some of my favorite ones too. 2 other ones I've heard and used and recommend too are, another one that's really great is, what do you think would be my biggest challenge in this position or in this role? Because I think that gives the person a better sense of what can you expect that's going to that will be tough, but, is that something you're motivated to like figure out that problem and solve it? And then another one is, what are the top 3 characteristics needed to succeed in this role? Something like that. But as Lori said, there's so many resources out there. And for those of you joining us today, all of our alumni out there, we will be sharing, like I said, of course, the follow-up recording, but we'll also share some follow-up resources with a list of questions to ask the interviewer. I have a great list myself, and we have great resources on that. So we'll share that in the follow-up email. And then my last question from the registrations before we move over to all the ones coming in the chat are, how can you get called for an interview after applying for a job?
Sure. So I love follow-up. I know applicants are nervous to follow up. So I think an appropriate follow-up is to wait about 2 weeks after you fill out an application. And hopefully you can get their information either through LinkedIn, I think is just the big way to research the company, look who's in their HR department and try and find the recruiter or the hiring manager. You might have to do a little bit of digging, but that's fine. I get LinkedIn messages all the time saying they're following up on an application. So I think that's probably the best way. And when you do follow up, I would just make it concise and just quickly a 1 or 2 sentence LinkedIn message. Hi, my name is Sam Johnson. I applied for the marketing assistant role. Just wanted to follow up, let you know I remain very interested in this position, and I look forward to hearing from you. Just to kind of keep your name top of mind with the recruiter, and that's really all you need to do. But I think waiting about 2 weeks after application is a good amount of time.
Awesome. Perfect. All right. So now we're going to start taking the questions that have been coming in through the chat. So my first question is from Lexi, and she's asked you, if you don't include a photo, of course, on your resume, will the recruiter just look at your photo on LinkedIn?
Oh, that's, yeah, I guess so. That's true. Yeah, I guess I would. I mean, the funny thing is I look at LinkedIn second.
Right.
So the resume is the first thing I see, and then I make my decision like, okay, I think I like this person. Let me check LinkedIn to make sure the LinkedIn matches the resume. That's really how I'm looking at it. And I'm not, and you're right, I do see their picture. I think at that point, I've already kind of made my decision to move them ahead in the process. But yeah, that's absolutely true.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I think Lori's point there too, especially when she was highlighting not including a photo, is to eliminate bias and discrimination, potential bias and discrimination there. So I think, as she said, she's looking at the person on paper and then deciding to, should this person get an interview? Usually I think recruiters going to LinkedIn to confirm what's on your resume, things like that. So as she said, it's not like, oh, seeing the photo changes an opinion on someone, or, oh, are they qualified? She's already decided, and that's helping to eliminate bias and discrimination there.
Yeah, exactly.
So my next question from Charles, he asks, you mentioned to put education at the end unless you're a recent graduate. What do you advise if someone has 10 years of experience or maybe more, but just recently graduated with an advanced degree like a master's or an MBA?
I would still put that at the end, at the bottom of your resume, and have your, say UCLA, your bachelor's degree, and then your school with your MBA below it. I still think those two belong together, but just at the bottom of the resume. Even if you got your undergrad a long time ago, but you recently got your master's, you can couple them and keep them together, but just at the bottom. And you probably don't even need to put dates on either of them, actually. So you can just have your undergrad and then your master's degree below it.
Perfect. Next question is from Annie, and she asks, when customizing resumes for each job, how would we manage our LinkedIn profile at the same time? She often submits her resume through the job section in LinkedIn.
That's a good question. I think I know with my LinkedIn, I have a little bit on there, but I could easily customize my resume. I'm trying to think, because if you submit your resume over LinkedIn, you are just submitting your LinkedIn application. So I think at that point, you might want to try and since you can't really customize it that way, you might try and follow up with the recruiter or the hiring manager and just say, I submitted my application on LinkedIn. I'm very interested in the marketing position you posted. If you'd like me to send you my resume, I'm happy to do that as well.
Okay.
I get that. And so I get that request, which I think is appropriate. And sometimes I'm fine. I have what I need on their LinkedIn. Sometimes I do ask for their resume. So I think following up is okay to see if they want to see more information.
Okay, great advice. My next question is from Lalita, and she asks, if you are in higher education, let's say with an MD or PhD, and have a long list of presentations, publications, awards, and maybe community service, how many pages would you recommend your CV or resume be?
Yes, in academics and in healthcare, it can be tough because I know you are published and you want to showcase those publications. I would, in that initial initial resume, you can put at the bottom list of publications on request or list of references, per your request, and that way, if they need it, a recruiter can ask for it. I'm trying to think if there's somehow. I've seen, which I think is kind of neat, where on recruiters, you can even, or on a resume, you can even hyperlink to maybe a page where you list your publications. I've seen that more in the creative field, like if you're going into marketing or you're a graphic artist or design. So it'll say, click here to review my portfolio, and it will take it directly to a web page. So I've seen people hyperlink their resumes. I actually really like that. Because I do like to click on it, because then it can take me to maybe a visual of who they are and what they've done. That would be my advice. But I'm trying to think. I know in that field, I guess if you were to list your, publications, it's not going to disqualify you in any way.
Right.
I think when I said that tip, it was more of a, just so you know, recruiters are scanning your resumes.
Yeah.
So, but I've seen that. I've seen a 5-page resume where 2 pages are the meat of the resume, and then it's 3 pages of publications. Of course, I'm not reading the publications or where they are, but I am seeing that you're doing it. But that might be better reserved for the further along in the hiring process you go. So maybe when you are meeting with the actual decision maker or the CEO or the MD or PhD that you're meeting with, you might want to bring to the interview a longer resume for them. So for these tips is more for the purposes of just quickly scanning and trying to get a phone interview. But I do think at some point in time, you should showcase those accomplishments and your published work.
Right, that makes sense. And I think that's a great tip of, potentially hyperlinking to an external site where you can have that full list and things like that. Because I think, to your point, I think what is the average scanning for over resume? 6 or 7 seconds for the most part is like the average time that someone, like a recruiter, looks at it. So I was keeping that in mind for our attendees today. So my next question from Mary Jane is, what are your thoughts on virtual backgrounds for setting the scene?
I don't have an opinion either way. If you want to just have it your natural, normal background or virtual, I think that's great. As long as your virtual isn't, I guess, too, crazy. You just don't want it to distract from you. You want the attention on you. And that's why, even when I talked about what you're wearing or your makeup or jewelry, you want it to not be distracting is probably my best advice. So
yeah, I agree. Next question from Jessica, and she asks, what kinds of questions do you recommend asking? And so any other closing questions? I think we might have you kind of shared a few of those follow-up or questions to ask the interviewer. So you might have got to that one.
Yes, and I think you're going to follow up with a list of questions, some sample questions we can ask.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Yep, we'll share a resource list of sample questions to ask the interviewer. So there'll be even more from the few really great ones that Lori shared. My next question, let me see, I'm just looking through the chat here, is, do you have any advice for answering the open-ended or situational questions when someone may really struggle to come up with examples on the fly?
Yes, that's a great question. And I do suggest preparing for those ahead of time. Situational and behavioral questions are really a recruiter's MO. And this is how they try and get to the meat of who you are. So we are gonna ask you, tell me about a time you solved a problem within your department, or give me an example of where you decreased budgetary spending, depending on the role and things like that. So the reason why recruiters are asking those questions is they want, once it kind of getting back to that communication, they want you to point out the situation that you're in, the problem, let's just say, that you need to solve, the action that you took to solve it, the initiative, and then really the results from that action, and then kind of your overall feeling at the end. So you almost have to take the recruiter through a bit of a journey when you are answering these types of questions. As far as when you're caught on the fly, and we've all been there, that's where practicing interviewing comes in. I would even Google what are some of the mostly used situational and behavioral questions that are out there, and really have a few answers prepared for them. I usually take my questions from the resume. So I'll have someone's resume in front of me usually, and I'll even read. So I see here that you helped developed a web programming for this company. Can you give me some examples of, some of the challenges you had to overcome in order to develop that program, something like that. So for me, I usually draw it from the person's resume. I try not to throw questions out of thin air, because I am trying to assess your resume and who you are. That being said, of course, recruiters do throw questions at you. Hopefully you're not getting trick questions. I think there's a little silly, but because we really just want to get to who you are in a situation that's difficult and how you handle that situation. So I would have a few examples ready, even some things that you're proud of, some work that you've done, some major accomplishment that you've done. And it could be something little like, I increased team morale in a department where morale was low, we had high turnover, and I helped to plan coffee meetings so everyone can get together. Those are big things on a team. And when we look for accomplishments, we don't need someone to say, oh, I've published 3 books last year. I mean, it's just these little things. We're just trying to gauge if we want you on the team or not, or in the company. So, but to your point, yes, you're going to have to practice. You are going to get a lot of situational questions in the interview process, not just from the recruiter, but especially from the higher ups. They're really going to dig deeply. Like, tell me an example. Why did you do that? Give me a reason. What were you thinking? Those are kind of the questions that they'll probably ask you.
Yeah. And to Lori's point, that's another thing that we will share, another resource we have. We'll share, as she said, there's so many resources and online, sites that share common behavioral questions. We'll share that as a resource as well, a list of common or maybe most expected behavioral interview questions. My next question is, how does one handle listing any gaps of employment on your resume?
Yeah, I like it when it's addressed on a resume. If not, I will just ask in an interview. So just be prepared to address it either way. So I've seen where there's a gap and someone will just write, I've even seen like, oh, stay-at-home mom, or stayed home to take care of my family during this time. You don't have to write that. If I see a gap, I am going to just ask it in the interview process. And the gap thing's a little interesting because unfortunately, some recruiters are really adamant about not seeing gaps, and some are a little bit more relaxed depending on the company, the culture. So these are things you can't really trick, unfortunately, your way out of. It just is what it is. When I look at a resume, I do like to see an overall story. And yeah, if in that story, there's a 2-year or 5-year gap, or I don't think that's bad, to be honest. I don't think that should disqualify you, especially if I see other things that I think make up for it in a way. So, so just know that it will be asked on the interview. I can tell you from a recruiter, in 2008, 2009, I see plenty of gaps during those years because the economy was really bad, a lot of layoffs then. So I don't even really think about it around those years. I know during COVID 2020, I probably for the rest of my recruitment career, if I see 2020 and a gap or a fall off or maybe a size in jobs. You went from a manager position to now a coordinator because you're just trying to get any job. I'm not going to think negatively at all. So, but just be prepared. I ask people all the time, because I see here that you weren't working for 5 years. Can you talk to me about what you were doing there? It should be a very easy question to answer, and feel free to say, yeah, my mom was really sick at that time. And my family needed me and I needed to take some time off to take care of her. That's all you need to say. Great, move on. And that's typically how that question is answered.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think very reassuring for many. So Katie has asked, what are some recommended answers when a recruiter or hiring manager asks, why are you looking for a new role?
Sure. Yes. So that's a good question, because this is a question I ask everyone. I usually ask it in the form of, well, why are you interested in working for us? Or why are you looking for a new role at this time? So I would be honest, actually. I would say, I really like be positive, by the way. Here's some advice. Do not talk bad about your current job or your current boss, even if you want to, because
time and place.
It's not the time and place. That's for your, friend or your mother later. Yep. So feel free to just say, I really like my current job, but I've just hit a ceiling here. There's no growth for me. And I'm really looking for an opportunity to work at a company where I can improve and learn more. Growth is a great reason to leave a company. Sometimes, you have hit a wall at that company. No matter what you can do, you're not getting any more money. You're not getting any more, I guess you're not moving up in the ladder in any way. So you're going to have to leave. And I think that's a very normal answer. Even asking for more money. I mean, you might want to say it in a way where you're looking for growth opportunities, and hopefully that will lead to more earning potential. I would maybe phrase it that way versus, I'm not getting paid anything, I need more money. Even if that's the truth, you're going to want to phrase it in a nicer way. Even if you are leaving a really bad work environment, toxic, my boss is this, the company is just, for whatever reason, I still would not say that to a recruiter or a hiring manager. I don't know why. It's just very off-putting to everyone in the room, even though you're being very honest. But we want, for some reason, the candidate comes across negative, and that's what you're trying to avoid in the interview process. So I would you're going to have to spin it positively as to why you're looking. But yeah, be honest. People look for jobs for the reasons I see over and over again is they want more growth opportunity. Mm-hmm. And with that comes, of course, more money. Sometimes you have a life change, and maybe you I don't know, just had a baby and you want more flexible working hours so you can stay home, be a more active mom or dad in their life, or your commute is just getting to be too much for you. You've had the same job for 2 years. You drive an hour and a half each way. You just can't do it anymore. Those are really honest things. What I would do, though, is when you do explain your reason, I would then tie it back to the job. So you can say, I'm looking for growth opportunities. And when I read this job description online, I thought, wow, I've heard great things about this company. They're really great about training and developing their employees. That's why I was interested in applying for your role. So you're going to always want to somehow tie your reason and motivation back to what this role in the company and why you're there in the first place.
Awesome. Such great advice. So Jenny asked, what are you looking for when you ask, where do you see yourself in blank number of years?
Yes. It's funny. There was a meme that my recruiter friends and I sent to each other a few months ago about, so everyone who answered the where do you see yourself in 5 years question in 2015 was completely wrong. Right. Just with everything this year. That's an interesting question. I think for me, I do ask that question, not all the time, but I think what I'm gauging is to see, maybe gauging your ambition, your motivation, what you would like to do. I think some people might say, well, I hope to be the CEO. And it takes a little bit longer than that to become the CEO of most companies, unless, you're working in a startup or something. But I just do like to hear that they just want to work hard, their ambition, their motivation. That's really what they're gauging. There's really no perfect answer. I do like to hear, like when I ask them, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I think a safe answer is to say, well, if I get this job, I hope I'm in this job and moving up to the best of my ability, whatever that means in your company. It's hard as a candidate. You don't know what the ladder looks like on the other side of the phone, like kind of what the corporate career ladder is. So it's hard to gauge what 5 years looks like in that role. So I think just a safe answer is saying you hope that this job will work out and you still want to be there. Showing some longevity, loyalty, that's kind of what they're going to be looking for.
Got it. How do you recommend incorporating a personal project like a blog, if relevant to the position, that if it's maybe like a writing heavy role, into a resume?
Yes. So similar to what I said earlier about if you can maybe hyperlink to some of those things, I do see that with writers and more of like the creative positions that we're recruiting for. I think that would be good too. You can even put on, if you're writing a blog, I would even put your website on there, maybe even in your contact information under your LinkedIn profile, or you can even have an accomplishments section and put it there. I think those things are great to have. And so I would definitely put it on your resume. It doesn't take up much space, much real estate on it's just going to be one little line, right. And, hopefully 1 or 2 little lines. So I would include it.
I agree for sure. Is it okay or even potentially recommended to include generic, like those transferable skills we were talking about earlier, leadership, communication, the soft skills that were listed in the example resume in a skills section? Is it okay to list those in there?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I think that's a great idea to list that, and because not only will the ATS maybe filtered out, but even when a recruiter looks at that, they quickly see those words jump out, and that's important. So I would definitely list those skills.
Perfect. And I know we are coming close to our 1 o'clock hour and wrapping up today, so we're going to try to get through a few more questions. For those of you that have a 1 o'clock conflict or a next meeting or something, and need to jump off, once again, this is being recorded. We will share it out. So these other questions that Lori is going to be able to answer as we wrap up, you can access later on if you do have to leave right at 1. So we're going to try to get through a few more for those that can stay. What are some tips for when the interview is with multiple people?
Yes, I know those are not easy days, whether you're meeting with people back to back all day or you're in a panel interview. So I think if you're meeting back to back, you almost have to look at it as a bit of a marathon and just really, bring your A game. You might need a little bit more coffee that day. Who knows? It's not easy. And I know this sounds cliched. I would just be yourself with everyone that you meet with. The reason why I say that is after each of those group interviews, they all then meet and talk about you. And so if you're one way with someone and another way with another person, that will come out eventually. So I would just be as honest and who you are with every person that you're meeting with. I hope that answers it. That's kind of panel interviews aren't easy. I know they're intimidating. I know when I set up panel interviews, I try not to set up more than maybe 3 or 4 person in a room, just because it's not a good interview experience. But it can be tough sometimes, especially if you're getting to much higher levels of interviewing. There's certain days where that's the only way we can get everyone in the room at the same time that day. So you might just have to roll with it. This does come back to, part of the interview process is gauging and your stress level a little bit and putting you on the spot and how you react in those types of situations. Because in any job, there's stressful moments. So part of the hiring process is going to kind of pressure you a little bit. So
yeah, I echo everything you said. And I was just going to say, I think to your point, it is a little bit sometimes of that having to just kind of grin and bear it. And once again, having, maybe a larger cup of coffee or a Diet Coke, if you're going from 9 to 2 or something like that, grabbing whatever you need to kind of, have that ready to go so that you can still be alert and engaging. And I think too, like, I know this sounds silly, but making sure you get enough rest the night before so that you are, you're able to wake up and feel, okay, I got this. I'm going to get through these, 3 or 4 interviews back to back and be able to bring my full self to each, interview I have with different people. So yeah, I think that's great tips you offered.
Yeah. And you might even start to feel like you're repeating yourself. That's okay.
Right.
Because
Yep.
with each person, they're probably going to ask you, so tell me about yourself. And you just did it 3 times to the 3 different people.
Right. You're like, can
That's
I press play from a previous? Yeah.
Exactly. That's okay. I mean, you're going to, you might have to say the same thing again, and that's fine.
Right. Remember, I was gonna say, for all of you out there, remember, it's new information to them. So even though you sound like a robot that's just pressing play, it's new to them. You're new meeting that person and they want to hear about you. So Chris has asked, what do you think about post-interview questions that are maybe more direct? Like, for example, is there anything about my candidacy that gives you concern that I wouldn't be able to succeed in the role? And he asks, is that too aggressive? Just curious your thoughts on that.
Yes. That's actually my opinion. It's funny. I don't love that question at the end, but let me tell you why. I think because when an interview ends, I'm still processing the interview. So I don't really have an answer for you unless it's something glaring. But even if it is, I'm probably not going to share it with you, to be honest. And yeah, because I do get asked that, like, is there something about my background that gives me pause? In that moment, it's like, I don't have a good answer for you. So I don't really love that question. I think it puts the recruiter on the spot, but in an uncomfortable way, because it almost forces us to give you bad news, if that's what you're looking for.
Right.
Or feedback, which in the moment, once again, I haven't quite processed it yet. And then of course, if it's good news, I've also seen this where I have a great phone interview and I think this is great. And then I take that resume to the hiring manager and they say no. So I don't want to mislead someone either. If at the end of an interview, if they say, what gives you pause, or do you have feedback for me? And I'm happy. There's times I've said, yeah, this is great. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I'm happy to submit your information to the hiring manager. And then it doesn't go anywhere else from there because the hiring manager, for whatever reason, says no. So yeah, it's kind of hard to ask that at the end of the interview. I wouldn't ask that. That is my personal opinion.
Yeah,
so
I was going to say
that, but I kind of puts me on the spot but not in an uncomfortable way.
Right. Yeah. I was going to say, obviously, I am not in the recruiter shoes as Lori with all of her experience and her background, but I would say, as someone who is in kind of the career development and career coaching world, and having worked with a lot of students and alumni on interviews, and even I've received this question from candidates multiple times, and I would agree with Lori that I think it's a bit aggressive and off-putting at times, because I usually end up in that same boat, like Lori said, like I'm still processing the interview that they just had, or maybe they just finished their presentation and just finished Q&A. And so I'm just processing everything, and I haven't had a chance to reflect just overall on the interview. And so that question just kind of catches me off guard, and not in a good way. So I would agree. Ronald has asked, is it appropriate to connect with the recruiter or person maybe that you address the cover letter to, let's say hiring manager, on LinkedIn before being offered an interview? So if someone wants to connect after they've applied to a role with the person maybe that they've written to in the cover letter, is that okay?
Connect.
Yeah, before being offered an interview.
Right. I think that's okay. I'm only pausing because I can see answers I can see a yes and a no answer. Yeah. I don't mind connecting after the interview. I actually like when an applicant follows up, even if it's part of the thank you note. I really enjoyed my time with you. If you don't mind, I'd love to connect on LinkedIn. So I do like that. I think before the interview, maybe not right away, but if a few weeks have gone by, I think that's okay. That's a hard question. I mean, it's fine. I connect with people all the time. So to me, I'm a lot more, that's great. I am a recruiter. So that's part of my job, is connecting, networking, building my group of people. Right. So I'm fine with that. I think that's okay. I think recruiters know that's kind of part of the job. So I think that's totally okay now that I talked it out in my head.
Yeah. How far do you recommend going back on your professional experience in terms of time? I'm assuming this person meant like on their resume.
Sure.
Maybe on resume, or maybe in some of the interview questions. But
going back. So I think going back 10 to 15, if you're, later on in your career, going back about 15 years is okay. And then leaving the rest of the resume, maybe at the bottom of the resume, just kind of in a quick bulleted list, show what they've done, but not go into like job responsibilities and accomplishments, just kind of a quick bulleted, what they've done. And even then that's completely, voluntary. You don't have to do that, because we're really looking for your most recent work, what you've done in the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. And then Anna asked, and I was going to give a gut answer, but I wanted to confirm with you. She was going back to kind of the tell me about yourself question that we talked about, which is kind of your, elevator speech. Would you recommend that answer is 60 seconds or less, or how long should the kind of answer for tell me about yourself be?
I would say no more than 2 to 3 minutes.
Okay.
Is good. So 1 minute might seem short.
Sure.
That being said, if someone does give me a 1 minute answer, I then respond with, oh, well, tell me more about that. Or I do then dig in a little bit deeper. I'm fine. If someone gives 1 minute, I get that some people don't like talking about themselves. Right. It's very uncomfortable. And so I can maybe sense that a little bit. And so I will try and go back and, well, tell me more about this on your resume. And I will ask the question. But I would say between 1 and 3 minutes is
okay.
good.
Yeah. 3 minutes max. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see.
I mean, that being said, if I'm talking to someone maybe later in their career, I mean, if it goes to 5+ minutes, I'm fine with that too. I mean, if I'm talking to someone who's 20, 30+ years in their career, they have a lot to say. And I do want to hear about it. So I'm interested in hearing that. So I guess I don't really have a hard and fast rule on that.
Okay. Yeah. So Melanie asked, when they apply via a website, of course, you don't get an actual name of the recruiter. How would you suggest they follow up if they don't have a name of the company to connect with?
You have to do a little bit of digging. Mm-hmm. You'll have to go on LinkedIn and look up the company and maybe look up their human resources department, or, and even then, really big like just say you're applying to IBM and it's a huge global company with offices all over the country and the world. That's gonna be tough, because I don't know if they have a centralized recruitment or if each region has their own recruitment. So this can be tough to answer. But really LinkedIn is the best way to try and find someone. But to be honest, you're not gonna find everyone that you're looking for because of that reason. That's not a very uplifting answer. But I know
it's true.
It can be tough with these companies and trying to find who they are. A lot of the times, I mean, if you're applying on LinkedIn, it's great because then you see the person, but not everyone posts on LinkedIn. You are applying through Indeed, Monster, Career Jobs, all these other places. So you might have to do a little bit of digging.
Yeah. So that's actually a great segue for my next question. And I think we'll take just one more after this. I know we're at 1:10, so we'll be mindful of everyone's time. And once again, we'll be sharing out the recording, follow-up resources, and you can connect with Lori and myself on LinkedIn, just as we were talking about. But kind of speaking about those job search websites or finding individuals, can you briefly share how those job search websites like Indeed or even LinkedIn work? And this person also asked, how is that process different than applying directly like on the company website? Do most companies recruit and search via Indeed or LinkedIn?
So both, actually. I prefer when someone does apply directly on our website. So if you see a job on Indeed.com at, just using that IBM example. So just say IBM posts a job. I try and go directly to their website and find the position there, because then you're kind of using the recruiter on that team, their applicant tracking system. It's great when it's in that system. That being said, I do know recruiters do read Indeed as well. And if you want to upload your resume on Indeed, that's another way we do find applicants. So either way is fine. I think a better way is really directly on their website, but if you apply on Indeed, it doesn't hurt you either, or on LinkedIn. Yeah, recruiters, we're also, just like you guys, we're trying to find candidates too from any resource possible. So we're looking on job boards and LinkedIn and our own internal applicant system.
Yeah, got it. So this person asked, I think, let's see, it was Lisa asked in terms of and regarding resume real estate. Must you include every job on your resume, or is including only the relevant experience appropriate? So for example, this person worked retail part-time for a few months between certain professional positions. So is it important to just include the relevant, or do everything, including maybe those retail roles?
Include the relevant to the position that you're applying for. So if you worked a part-time retail job because you're just trying to make ends meet and pay the bills, but now you're applying for a marketing position, unless you did something marketing related at your retail job, I wouldn't include it on there. And then that's perfectly okay. A recruiter will probably ask, oh, I see there's a little bit of a career gap here. You can say, well, I was in between jobs. So I took a job working at Nordstrom for 6 months or for a year to pay the bills. But really my heart is in marketing, and this is where I want to be. So that happens. People wait tables, people drive Uber, especially in this kind of gig economy.
Yeah.
If you want to list it on there, you can. If it gets to be too much, it does look kind of messy to a recruiter, because you have job and then Uber and job and working at Banana Republic or things like that, or working at In-N-Out in between jobs, or in restaurants. And so I think unless it's relevant to what you're looking for, you probably don't need to include that.
Okay, super helpful. All right, this will be the last final question. I think we were able to get through most of them. So thank you everyone for submitting all your questions, and my colleague Joseph, who was doing his best to feed all of your questions to me so I could ask Lori. So our final question will be, are there any faux pas to avoid on a panel interview, especially maybe thinking about now that it's going to be virtual and you might have multiple people and gallery view or something? This person had said they always worry they're not equally paying attention to all people on the panel. So any faux pas or things to be mindful of on a panel interview?
Yes. Other than kind of the basics of you want to be presentable, have good energy on the panel interview, what I would do is the person who asks you the question, I would look at the person, I guess, on the screen most of the time. Yet I think it's good to then maybe move down the line and make contact with everyone else eventually. It is hard on Zoom. That's advice I would give if you were in real life interviewing with the panel. You kind of address the person directly who asked you the question. But you do want to include everyone else as well. So you don't want to give that person also 100% of your time. But so you want to answer his or her question, but look at others. That being said, how I look at you on Zoom or at that person may not come across on the other side. Just so you know, that's perfectly okay. We're all in this new virtual interviewing world, also recruiters and hiring managers alike. So I've never heard anyone get off a Zoom call and say, wow, that person looked at the corner the whole time, or looked at me funny. And so I think we all kind of realize in this world that eye contact is going to be a little different through Zoom, and that's okay. We've even had interviews where, as much as you try and prepare and be professional, a dog jumps on your lap, or your kid comes running in the room, or the doorbell rings because the Amazon delivery driver is here.
Yeah, same packages here. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so okay. I've been in on those interviews, and we just have a good laugh, and that's happened to me. I've seen it happen to others, and it's really just the way of the world now. So I wouldn't be hung up too much on those sorts of things. I don't think anyone's disqualifying you for those types of things, because everyone's kind of in it right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's almost like we've reached that point of normalizing just those, knowing that certain things will happen. You're at home, you're at wherever you are, maybe you're at parents, family members, and doing the best you can. And so I think, to your point, you're not going to be disqualified if your child opens the door in the background or something like that. And being able to just, you've done the best you can to control your environment, but this is a very unique time. So that will conclude our session. And so thank you so much, Lori, for your time today. I don't know that you're actively watching the chat, but I can tell you right now that there's been so many thank you comments coming in to you, and people expressing how helpful your session was, tips and answers you provided. I think so many people feel reassured and supported and encouraged by hearing your perspective and thoughts to a lot of the questions that they had. So thank you so much for your time today, and really appreciative. And once again, as we said, we'll be sharing out, we'll get the recording edited by our marketing team, and then we'll be sharing out the follow-up resources as well as the recording. And in that email as well, we'll share a brief feedback survey so that you can provide feedback on this session and let us know if it was helpful and beneficial. That will help myself and Lori and future alumni who we want to invite to join us on our career conversation series to help you all continue to navigate this unique time and reach your career goals, or find that new job, or make that career pivot. So for all our Bruins out there, we are here to support you during this time. I recommend you check out our Bruin Success podcast. We interview awesome UCLA alumni to kind of hear their career journeys. We have a ton of resources on our Alumni Career Engagement website. And once again, more programs and career conversations and content to come for all of you. So thank you so much again to all of you for tuning in today, and take care, stay well.